actually gonna put the oil pan on the engine today, and we're gonna get that mounted into the Snowcat with the transmission. So follow on for that, we'll get that in. The heads and the rest of the valve train stuff are gonna be here tomorrow, and then we'll get all that put together and assembled and finally ready to go. We also just picked up the cab and the hood from sandblasting today. So we're gonna start prepping this thing, doing a little bit of metal work that needs done, and get this ready for paint so we can get it set on the Snowcat. Really everything's going pretty quickly at this point. Once the cab's mounted, pretty much all we gotta do is, you know, get the wiring done, get the gauges put up. We're gonna make a new custom vinyl covered dash for inside of there. So really there isn't a whole lot left to do. I know it might seem like it considering there's absolutely nothing in there, but once all the parts get here, things start going together pretty darn fast. So here we go. Fuck you. All right guys, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna start assembling the bottom half of this engine. We're gonna put the windage tray in, and we're gonna put the new Sicky Manufacturing oil pan that they did for this thing. It's a front sump setup, as I explained before. Because of the torsion axles, that's where we have to have everything. So let's start putting this together, and here we go. All right guys, so Sicky Manufacturing sent us this front sump oil pan for this build. And as I explained before, we have to have a front sump due to where the torsion axles sit. So there's no way around it. These things are made in the USA, and Sicky Manufacturing does some really cool things to make this oil pan a little better than the others. So they start with a 6061 billet aluminum backplate, and what that does is that maintains structurability even through welding and all that stuff. They also do the same thing on the backplate, which retains the OEM structurability that they require there, all right? Another thing they do that's really nice is these things are machined flat after they weld it. Because as you know, when you weld anything, the metal tends to warp and stuff like that. And I know from previous experiences, like you can have a lot of problems getting these things to seal properly without using like RTV or something like that. But with this, you can use just a factory gasket and everything's just fine. Inside on this thing, they use a trapdoor baffle system to make sure like all of the oil stays around the pickup tube. So whether you're doing like circle track, drag racing, whatever, you never have to worry about running out of oil, which is a nice thing to have. They do come with like a magnetic drain plug and all that stuff as well. They have, if you come around here, they have a few different configurations that you can get for where the oil filter relocation kit goes, which makes it very convenient. They have a straight down option or a straight out the side version. And they have a very low profile design. Like, I don't know if you can see here, but top to bottom on this thing is not very thick at all, and it's gonna work perfect for our application. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and get this thing installed onto the engine, and that way that part of it's done. Then we're going to actually put the transmission on this thing. We're gonna get it put into the Snowcat and figure out where we need to put the motor mounts. We're gonna get that done. So by the end of the day, this thing will actually be sitting in there where it's gonna go, and should give us a good whiff of motivation to see this thing finally sitting in there. And then tomorrow we'll do the heads and the rest of the valve train and all that stuff as well. All right, guys, as you can see, we got the Sicky Manufacturing oil pan completely installed on this thing. The only thing we're waiting on is the dipstick, and they were a couple days out on that. But now that we've got this thing mounted on here, which looks amazing, by the way, as you can see here, everything is made in USA. We got the oil filter relocation setup mounted on this thing. And that also is a billet part made by Sicky Manufacturing. Now that this oil pan's on there, we can bolt the transmission up to this thing, set it in, and actually see how it's going to fit in there, what we need to trim out on the floor, and then we can weld up the plates for the motor mounts and put this thing in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to get this thing off the engine stand. We're going to hook up that transmission to it right there, and then get this thing slid in there to figure out where we need to trim the floor. So that's what we're doing right now. So here we go. All right, guys, so we got the engine and transmission set down in here. And the mounts we're using Novak mounts, and they're adjustable side to side and up and down. So what we're going to do is we're going to weld this piece here, which comes off, to a piece of plate steel. And then on the outside, we're going to make the same size piece of plate, and we're going to sandwich it together because that's the best way to get any structural strength out of this tub, considering it's a unibody design. So that's what we're going to do on both sides there. And then we'll probably end up plating off this big hole from where the old oil pan's stuck through. But everything is coming together, and tomorrow we'll have the heads, we'll have the engine mounted, the transmission mounted, and we can get the headers on it and test fit pretty much everything. So that's what we're going to call it quits for tonight, and we'll see you tomorrow. All right, so how these mounts mount. This piece of U channel here, as you can see, that we're going to weld to these mounts here that we made. And this is going to sit in there like that. And we're going to weld the outside U channel to this plate like this. And then we're going to bolt this through the tub and sandwich it with another piece of steel on the outside. And we're also going to bolt it to the floor. So that way it disperses the load of the engine across more of the tub than just one small location. We were afraid this engine might cave in or buckle the sides with that much power. We might end up having to do a cross support of some sort, but hopefully we won't need to, because we do have this up here, and that should keep things pretty rigid. And then we'll have the front radiator support and all that up here to keep everything tight. But what we're going to work on now is getting the engine out of here, get those welded up, and then we'll be able to set the engine right in and bolt it down. All right, guys, so we got the motor mounts welded up and bolted in. These, of course, will be painted, but as you can see, they are very, very solid. They're not going to go anywhere, and it's displacing the load of the engine over a much greater area than if we just welded the little tabs on there. So now what we're going to do is get the engine put back in, and then we're going to line up and get the transmission mount finished up. And then that should all be mounted, and then we're going to put some cylinder heads on and some headers and see what we got. Here we go. All right, guys, so we got the engine set back in, and it's actually sitting on the mounts now. So that's exactly where everything's gonna be. And now what I'm working on is back here. I'm working on putting in this transmission cross member here. I've got it all centered up and leveled, and I got the hole drilled for the transmission mount. Now I have to get this level here and then drill through the tub and bolt that to the sides. And then essentially the engine and transmission is completely mounted. And then we're gonna move on to installing these beauties right here, the Texas Speed Sense and PRC heads. And here we go. And I will let you guys follow along for all this. I'll time lapse the heads and everything going on, and then I'll go over all the valve train and the cam specs and all that stuff that we're running in this engine. All right, so as you can see here, we got the transmission cross member put in. We got it notched so you can get to the bolt, or the nut, should I say, for the rear transmission mount. Everything's in and solid. And now we're gonna start on assembling this guy. guys, so what I just did was I installed the brand new Comp Cams LS7 lifters and some new lifter buckets, okay? So now that I have this installed, what we're gonna do is set the head gaskets on there. Texas Speed sent us some Cometic head gaskets for this build, and then we're going to set the new heads on there, all right? The new heads are PRC heads, and I'll go over the details on those in just a few minutes after I get those set on here. So here we go. All right, so we got the heads on here, and as I mentioned before, these are PRC heads. They're 237 intake, 84 exhaust, and they're all CNC machined inside. You can see all the machining marks right there. Great looking heads. Put them on with some ARP head bolts, so we shouldn't have any issues with leaks there. And now I'm going to put the intake manifold on. I'm also going to figure out what length push rods we need, because that's going to be a little different now that we changed the heads and the gasket to maintain the same compression ratio. So let's get going on that. So on this build, we decided to go with the Comp Cam's Thumper Cam. That's their LS cam for the truck line of engines. It helps maintain a really good bottom end torque, and that's what we want on this thing. We're not really concerned with high RPM horsepower. We want this thing to have a lot of power right out of the hole. So as I mentioned earlier, I already installed the LS7 Comp Cam lifters. The cam has already been installed. What we're gonna do now is we're going to check for a push rod length, and then we will set the intake on there and see how she's starting to look. I can already tell though, we might have to do some clearancing here for the headers. There's just no way around it unless we can find some thinner headers somehow. The BBK headers that we got are not that thick, but I think they're gonna hit that side if we try to put them on. So we'll figure that as we go. All right, guys, so I've pretty much hit a stopping point for tonight. I'm here at the farm and Nick isn't here, so I don't know where some of the measuring tools are that I needed to do the push rod length check. So I put everything together just kind of loosely, just to kind of get a good fit and see how how it's gonna look in the end. And I hope you're as satisfied as I am, because this thing looks really, really sweet. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of show you around what I got done this evening. And then tomorrow we'll hopefully pick back up, get a couple things measured, get the new push rods on the way. We also need to install the trunnion upgrade that Texas Speed sent us for the rocker arms. As you know, when those little needle bearings explode, they go all through the engine. So we're gonna prevent that from happening right out of the gate. As I go over the engine, I'll show you some of the other parts from our sponsors that has come in and looks really, really sharp. This could be the nicest Thigh-Call Snowcat on the planet. And by the way, we did come up with a name. The name is the Snow Devil. That's what we're gonna call it, and that's what we're sticking to. So Snow Devil it is, and let's show you around what we got done tonight. All right, guys, as you can see, it's starting to really come together. Fast sent us this 92 millimeter intake that we're gonna be running along with our Fast Big Mouth throttle body. Texas Speed sent us some black LS2 style valve covers and some new coils. We got all that stuff mounted up. Just trying to kind of test fit to see how everything's gonna be. Now we have kind of decided that the headers are gonna hit right here. So I'm gonna look for a thinner header possibly, or we're going to notch this part of the corner out so the headers will clear in there without any issue. Once again, the Sticky Manufacturing oil pan just looks amazing in there. Everything came out really, really sharp. The new engine mounts. Around back here, I did get the transmission all mounted up there. So now all we have to do is wait for the drive shaft to come in, and from there back, it's pretty much gonna be taken care of. Now with that being said, I don't know if you remember how nasty the engine that was in this was. Needless to say, the transmission that was connected to it probably wasn't any better, and your thought was correct. When we pulled this thing apart, the fluid came out of it was literally as black as that intake right there. I mean, burnt. TCI is going to be sending us a 4L80 for this thing, and I can't wait for that to come in. I will definitely go over that in fine detail when it shows up so you can see all the goodies that come along with it. They are also sending us a Outlaw TCI shifter for this thing, so that's going to be pretty wicked. But like I said, as of right now, we're going to call it a night and pick back up on this thing hopefully tomorrow, if not Saturday. All right, guys. So what we're going to do now is we're going to figure out what length push rod we need. How they do that is they use this little adjustable push rod here. And we basically set this to the absolute bottom of the intake lobe. And then we adjust this to where there's zero lash, no pressure on the lifter, and then all we do is we adjust this till the set amount of preload is on that lifter, and then we take that measurement, and then we know exactly what length push rod we need for this setup. So that's what we're gonna do now. All right, guys, so what we're gonna do now is we're gonna do the trunnion upgrade on these rocker arms. And as most of you know, these factory rocker arms have no real retaining system. So if these things fail, it dumps a ton of these little needle bearings down into the motor. And as you know, that's just not a good thing. So the new setup, what it does is it comes with new bearings, and it uses a C-clip setup in here. So that way the needle bearings cannot come out if it fails. So we're gonna do that to all 16 of these right now. So here we go. All right, we got those completely upgraded. Now, we shouldn't have any issues with those needle bearings accidentally popping out. As you can see, the C-clips on both sides there hold those in place. And these are ready for install as soon as we get our new push rods in.
All right, guys, so we're going to start on the cab today. Justin took it to Sandblasters, and we got it back. What we're gonna do is these old light holes, we're gonna take these and weld them in so there's no more holes in the roof. I'm gonna finish welding around these lift brackets, so that's gonna be a little bit stronger. I'm gonna start working on this rusted out piece. We're gonna cut it out, this whole section right here, and weld in a new piece. That way, when the window guy gets here, he can start fresh. If we can't get this piece reset, then we're gonna take this air intake vent, move it up here, and reconfigure this whole thing just to get rid of this rusted out piece. The cab heater is gonna go in here from Be Cool, and we're gonna have to cut this out and custom make all that. Some of the other details that we're gonna do to the cab is we gotta fix this rust hole back here, so we're gonna cut this out, put a plate in there, weld that in, and then up here where the old clutch pedal used to go through, we gotta cut that out, and we're gonna put a plate in there to cover that up, make it really nice and clean in the cab.
As Nick just described, we're gonna get some work done on this thing. So we're gonna do a little time lapse of us cutting and welding and doing all that fun stuff. So here we go. All right, guys, so we've filled in this pole that was in the back of the cab and welded it up. Now we're gonna use some Bondo and put that together. I know it's not perfect, but it'll work well for that. And then we also replaced this window sill, ledge, whatever you want to call it, area. And we're gonna Bondo this and get it all sanded down. The next thing we're gonna do is replace this bottom piece here. As you can see, it's gotten kind of thin over the years. So here we go. All right, guys, so as you can see here, we got most of the junk cut out. And we had to cut out a lot of this vent here on the floor, which is actually for the air intake. So I've been working on a replacement grate for this thing that we're gonna weld in, and that'll take the spot of that. Right now, what I'm actually gonna do is start working on bondoing in that piece there and this back cab section here, and spot fill any other little low spots and stuff like that. So here we go. Right now we're putting in the last pieces here, the bottom of the, I guess it would be the opposite of the driver's door. So it's just a solid panel. This thing only has a door on one side. We got that piece tacked in. We're gonna get that all filled in. And then I made a couple pieces for the inside here where we cut out some of the rotted material that we aren't using. As I showed you earlier, we had that angled piece that I made with the slots in it, and that's actually the air outlet vent for the heater in this thing. So we're gonna get that welded in right here as well. All right, guys, so now we have the panels all welded in. So as you can see, yeah, it's not real pretty. We're gonna grind it down. And then I'm gonna get that body work done, and then we're gonna paint this thing. So hopefully once that's all done, we can actually start seeing what this thing's gonna look like. We have a glass company that has already measured for all this stuff. So once the cab is complete, we can get the glass put in and then get that tinted. Once it's painted though, what I'm actually gonna start doing is doing a custom dash and custom instrument and switch panel up top there. So I think it'll look pretty nice once it's done, but here we go, guys. All right, guys, so we got all the body work done on this thing. Everything's filled in, sanded, ready to go. So we are going to start laying some paint on this thing, and hopefully it looks pretty awesome when it's done. So here we go, guys. All right, guys, so we got 2 coats of paint done on the cab. It looks way better than it did before. A lot better. I'm sure, as you could see from the other parts we showed off in the video earlier, it was kind of rough. But it came out looking really great. And it's gonna look a lot better with some glass in it, but we're gonna wait till we get all the fab work done on the dash and anything else that we need to get done. But from all of us here at Racing and Randomness, thank you so much for watching these videos. It means the world to us, and we're just trying to be entertaining for you guys and hopefully do some sketchy stuff in the Snow Devil here when it's done. But from all of us here at Racing and Randomness, please like, subscribe, smash that subscribe button. It really helps us out a lot. So if you can do that, I would really appreciate it. And my son would like to also chime in with this.
Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.